Ladies and gentlemen, about 14 years ago, March 28th of 2010, I received a phone call. When I answered that phone, there was a young lady on the other side of the phone, I should say, that was crying hysterically. And the first thing I thought to myself, what happened? What is wrong? Who passed away? What's the emergency? The young lady would not stop crying. It was hysterical. I was trying to get the young lady to calm down, and finally she calmed down. And when she calmed down, I said, Patrice, what's wrong? She said, Reggie, I'm pregnant. I said, oh my God. I'm getting ready to have a baby. Now, I didn't know if I was having a boy or I was having a girl. But the first thing that I knew was being a father is a huge responsibility. The second thing that I realized, and that came to me instantly and naturally, is this: that if I was going to be a father, I didn't want my child to feel the same way I felt as a young adolescent. Let me give you some context. I'm from the city of Trenton, New Jersey. Most of you are familiar with the city of Trenton, New Jersey. It's approximately 7 square miles, about 85,000 people, 15,000 students in the public school system. Graduation rate hovers somewhere around 71%. I grew up in a part of Trenton called East Trenton. If you're from Trenton, we call it the section, Wilbur section. That's where I was born and raised, on a 100 block of Kyler Avenue. I was raised by my grandmother, who was a school teacher for 35 years. How many years?
35.
35 years. My grandmother and my grandfather, but my grandfather worked 2 jobs throughout my entire childhood. Now here's the irony in the story. My father lived the next street over. I lived on the 100 block of Kyler Avenue between Greenwood and Walnut. My father lived on the 100 block of South Walton. When I would walk out my back door, and my father walked out of his back door, we both met in the alleyway. We could see each other, we could play catch. But every time I saw my father, it felt like I was looking at a stranger.
My God.
So when I found out on March 28th, 2010, that I was having a child, I didn't want my child to feel the same thing that I felt year after year, day after day, week after week. But I didn't know what to do. What do? Because when you go to school, they teach you algebra. They teach you history. They teach you language arts. But there's no manual on being a parent. There's no manual on being a father. So what does it take if you really want to be a father, because you understand that strong fathers build strong families? What do? I didn't know what to do. So I Googled. Google. No? Google can help me. I Googled. Now, is it okay for me to be honest with you guys? Do I have your permission?
Yeah.
I have your permission.
Yeah.
I got your permission, brother? All right, I just want to be honest with you. So I Googled, and I put in the Google search engine, a black father raising a black child. That's what I put. The result came back in a book called Raising Black Boys by Dr. Jawanza Kunjufu. Now, fast forward a few weeks later, I found out I was having a boy. I thought I was having a girl. I thought I was going to have me a little girl, daddy's little girl. We found out we was having a boy. My wife was crying hysterically. I was shocked. I was shocked. I purchased that book, Raising Black Boys by Dr. Jawanza Kunjufu. Now, I always ask people a question, and maybe you guys want to ask this question Thanksgiving at the dinner table. I always said, if you had to choose 5 individuals, dead or alive, who would you want at your dinner table? And I'm here to tell you that one of those individuals that I would want to have at my dinner table is Dr. Jawanza Jr. That book changed the whole trajectory of my life. It was a paradigm shift because it was the first time that somebody had laid out a blueprint, something that I could reference that could help me out to be a father. See, you don't understand the pain that I felt growing up, not having my father in my life. I often wondered, is there something wrong with me? Was it something that I did or didn't do? How could he live so close to me, geographically, but I have no relationship with him? But that book changed my perspective. It gave me a sense of hope. How many of you know hope is an expectation? How many of you know that if you can give a child hope, you can change their lives? If you can give an adult hope, you can change their lives as well. That book gave me hope. That book inspired me so much that I decided to go back to school. Now, if you know me, you know I was really inspired. Because if you know me, I did not like school. But I was so inspired by the work of Dr. Jawanza Kajufu. I purchased every book and read as much as I could possibly read. I enrolled and went back to graduate school. And when I went back to graduate school, I wanted to have one primary focus. How can parental involvement narrow the academic achievement gap? There's an achievement gap. If you don't know what that is, you can Google it and you can search it. But there's an achievement gap. And I wanted to understand, how could we narrow that gap? And what role could I play as a parent in narrowing that gap? Not just for my child, but for students in general. That's important to me. So I went back to school. That was my dissertation work. The lived experiences of black fathers and how their involvement can help narrow the academic achievement gap. Specifically, I wanted to focus on something that we have known to be called the fourth grade failure syndrome. So if you don't know it, let me educate you real quick. Oftentimes, our boys and girls are on grade level until they get to the fourth grade. The curriculum and learning style changes. And when the curriculum and learning style changes, you see a decline in their academic performance. It's called the fourth grade failure syndrome. I didn't want my son to experience that. So I wanted to study and educate myself so I can help him and help others. When I was going through my dissertation, I interviewed 15 black men, and asked them to share with me their lived experiences as they were growing up as young adolescents, and now how they educate and parent their own children, male and female. There's 5 things that I learned. How many? There's 5 things that I learned. There's a lot of questions that I asked. There were 7 themes that I developed. But there was 5 common factors that I learned from my dissertation research that I will never forget. If we're going to be fathers that are going to help our children be high achievers, you need to know these 5 things. For my note takers, the first thing is this. High achieving parents, high achieving fathers set high expectations. Let me say that again. High achieving parents, high achieving fathers that want their kids to be successful, they set high expectations. One of the fathers told me this. His mother said, aim high for success. Now, I didn't have my father in my life, but I had my grandmother. And the one thing I can tell you is that my grandmother set high expectations. I knew coming home with bad grades was not an option. School for me was a necessary evil. But I tell you what, when that report card came home, them grades better be right. My grandmother was crazy, y'all. She was crazy. I'm telling you, I felt like she had to be that way, but she was crazy. My grandmother used to say things to me like this. Son, the same way I brought you into this world, I'll do what? I take you out. See, she crazy. I'm telling you, she crazy. How can you bring me in? You're my grandmother. You didn't even give birth to me. So it shows you how she was thinking. But my grandmother understood high expectations because my grandmother understood that she was raising me in the 80s and the 90s.
Right.
I'm talking about the crack epidemic.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the war on drugs. I'm talking about white flight. Y'all said I could be honest. I'm just being honest. I'm talking about my grandmother was one of the first 2 black families on the block, and she's now probably the only one that's still there.
Yeah.
That originally moved there in the 100 block of Kyle Avenue. My grandmother understood that if I was going to be successful, she had to set the standard. Standards don't change. Expectations change over time, right? My son Isaiah, who's now 13, I have 13-year-old expectations for him. When he's 20, I'm going to have 20-year-old expectations for him. But standards don't change. Expectations do. My grandmother set some standards. High expectations is important. My grandmother realized time on task matters. She used to say things to me like this: son, what you do most, you do best. What you do most, you do what? Best. She understood time on task. That's what I'm trying to tell you, and y'all think I'm joking. She's nuts. Let me tell you what happened in the summertime. Now, most students, you get 2 months off in the summertime, correct? July and August. What do most kids want to do in the summertime? Somebody just call out. What do most kids want to do in the summertime?
Play and have fun.
Play. What else? Sleep. And what else? And eat. Somebody said they want to eat, sleep, and play. Those are the 3 things they want to do. Those are the 3 things I wanted to do. Not my grandmother. Not my grandmother. She said, son, you get 1 week off. You get 1 week off. Fortunate for her, unfortunate for me, we lived in walking distance to a library. Monday through Friday in the summertime, my grandmother sent me to the library every single day. I had yard work to do and I had school work to do. School work that she created for me. I'm like, why am I going to school? I don't even need help with my grades.
Oh, man.
Expectations. She understood that if I went to the library in the summertime for those 2 months and I continued to further my academic enrichment, that over the span of 12 years, 12 times 2 is 24. How much further along would I be ahead if I spent that extra time? My grandmother understood expectations. The second thing is this. The second common factor in my dissertation research was this. Those fathers were consistent. Those fathers were consistent. Their parents were consistent with them, and they recognized they need to be consistent with their children. If you're going to be a father, if you're going to be a parent that has high achieving students, you have to be consistent. Now, what do I mean by consistent? The first thing is this. I believe you need to give them unconditional love. And you need to do so in such a way that you're consistent. And when you do that, they know that you care about them. They know that you love them. They know that you respect them. And I truly believe this. If a child is going to be successful in life, if they're going to be emotionally healthy, mentally healthy, they need to know that you love them, you care about them, and you respect them. If you agree, say amen.
Amen.
Second common factor is you have to be consistent. Let me share with you a story. I was watching an interview by a football player named Ricky Williams. Some of you may be familiar with him, some of you may not be. But I was watching this interview, and during this interview, Ricky Williams was telling the person that was interviewing him that he noticed something when he was growing up in school. And listen to me carefully. He said he noticed that every time that he was on the football field, and the quarterback would hike the ball, and he would take the ball, and he would run, and he would break tackles, and he would get to the end zone, and he would score a touchdown. Everyone consistently cheered for him. He said he noticed, though, that in the classroom, if he got good grades, if he did well, there was no celebration. So he understood that if he wanted to consistently feel loved and cared for and respect and championed, he had to score what? Touchdowns. So let me tell you what I learned to do as a father. Let me show you how life works. I listened to that and I learned from it. When my son, what's his name? Isaiah. I have to make sure you're paying attention. When my son Isaiah comes home, and he does it all the time, you can ask my wife, does it all the time. He'll come home and say, Dad, I got a 95 on my algebra test. I go, you did what? You did what? You got a 95 on your algebra? I have speakers in my house. I go turn the speakers on. I start playing music. I chase him around the house. I hug him. I kiss him. I tickle him. I tackle him. I celebrate academic success.
Come on, that's good.
Every single time that my son does well can be a quiz. He'll come home and he'll share that with me because I'm consistent in regards to showing him the love that he deserves based on his academic and athletic achievement. First common factor, high expectations. Second common factor, consistent. Third common factor, you must model the standard. Let me say it again. Third common factor in regard to fathers that are going to build strong families so we can have strong communities is you have to model the standard. Now let me be clear. Modeling the standard does not mean that we're going to be perfect. It does not mean that we're going to be perfect. But what it means is this, is that we need to model the very thing that we're asking our children to do. Because I believe that children are actors and they act out what they what? See. They act out what they see. So we're going to expect them to be high achievers. If we want them to be successful, if we want them to be men and women of high character, we must model the standard. I remember when my son was probably about 3 years old, he was sitting in the back seat, in his booster seat or child seat, one of the two. And I remember I sent him to this place in Hamilton Township at the police department called Safety Town. And I don't know if any of you have ever heard of Safety Town, but Safety Town is where you take little kids and they learn how to ride bicycles. And they learn how to cross the street. They learn how they're supposed to sit in the car and put their seatbelt on. So in Safety Town, they taught my son that when your parents get in the car, your parents should first put their seatbelt on before they start driving. So I got in the car one day and I started driving. And I forgot to put my seatbelt on. And my son was quick to remind me, Daddy, at Safety Town, they said you're supposed to put your seatbelt on first. He was modeling what he had been taught. We have to model the standard. So there's certain things I have my son do, for an example. When he's at school, now these are my rules, and I have no military in me, but these are my rules. Isaiah, I need you to say yes or no, yes please, or no thank you. I need you to say yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am. I need you to learn the names of all the individuals in your school. All of them, all of the support staff, not just your teachers, all of them, because they're all helping to pave the way for where you're going. But guess what? I have to do the same thing. So when he's with me, I need to say yes or no. Yes, please, no thank you. Yes, sir, no sir. Yes, ma'am, no ma'am. Because he's watching me. We must model the standards. First common factor, high expectations. Second common factor, you must be consistent. Third common factor, you must model the standard. The fourth common factor is this. You have to instill a level of hope. And the way you do that, positive affirmations. Positive affirmations. I'm about to say something to most of you that may shock you. But I'm telling you the truth because you gave me permission to be honest with you. I don't ever talk to my son about getting good what? Good what? In school we talk about getting good what? I don't say it. I don't say it. I try to take him to school as much as I can. I travel a lot to speak, so I can't take him to school every day, but when I do, there's two things that I always say to him. I get out the car, I walk around, I say two things to him. One of them is not get good grades. Let me explain to you why. Most people don't know this, but Dr. King graduated high school at the age of what? Anybody know? Close? 15. He skipped 9th grade and Ninth grade and 11th grade. He graduated at 15 years old, went to Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia. As an 18-year-old, a junior at Morehouse College, Dr. King wrote an article called The Purpose of Education. The Purpose of Education. And let me summarize it for you. He said the purpose of education is intelligence plus character. Intelligence plus character. So when I drop my son off every single day at school, there's two things that I tell him. One, son, choose your friends wisely. Choose your friends wisely. Because my grandmother taught me the old saying, and some of you have heard it. If you show me your friends, I'll show you your future. The second thing I tell him is this. Isaiah, just give me your best. And your best will always be good enough. If he gives me his best, I'm not worried about the grades. Because if he gives me his best, that report card is going to look good. And even when he doesn't get an A, because he got a B- 1 year in algebra, and he came home and he was discouraged, I asked him one simple question. Isaiah, was it your best? That's it. Was it your best? And if it was his best, I can live with it because I can get him the necessary help that he needs. What I'm trying to do is instill hope. Our children need to know their worth and their value. They need to know that they can be, that they will become. They need to know that they're special, they're uniquely made. There's three things that I want for my son. This is me personally. I want my son to have a deep devotion and love for God. Number two, I want him to understand his heritage and his history. I want him to understand that people have paved the way for him to be where he's at right now, today. And number three, this is for me. And number three is I want him to be the employer rather than the employee.
Amen.
That's for me. 5 common factors. Number 1, high expectations. Number 2, you must be consistent. Number 3, you must model the standard. Number 4, you have to provide hope. And I like to do that through positive affirmation. And 5th and final was this. If we're going to be fathers who empower our children, we have to understand we are the primary educators. We are the primary educators. We need to lay down the blueprint for them. We need to educate them, teach them, love on them, support them, guide them. We need to make sure they understand that in the home, that should be the number one place that they are able to learn and grow. And I don't know if you know that, but back in the 50s and 60s, the home was a primary place where kids received an education. And I'm not talking about an academic institution. I'm talking about education in terms of acquiring knowledge. We must be the primary educators if we want our kids to be high achievers. I'm going to leave you with this story because I think it's really important for you to understand this. How important it is for us to model fatherhood, because I truly love the theme for this, that strong fathers build strong communities. I want you to understand that throughout my entire early childhood life, primary and even secondary, I struggled with my own worth and value because my father being so close to me, I had no relationship, as I mentioned. When I went to college, I took an African American Studies course. And when I took an African American Studies course, it really piqued my interest into understanding what does it take to really acquire intelligence plus character. I didn't know what to do, but the thing that struck me was this. If I want to be successful in this thing called life, I need to have some type of role model, mentor. I knew I needed guidance, but I didn't know what to do. But my grandmother always taught me. She would say, baby, when you don't know what to do, pray. I did what my grandmother taught me. I started praying. What was my prayer? Lord, help me to find someone that can provide me with some male guidance and leadership, because I want to know what does it take to become a responsible man, one day a responsible father, one day a responsible husband. I didn't know what that was going to take. My life changed February of 2002. February 2002, I was playing basketball at a small Division III college here in New Jersey called New Jersey City University. I was in the locker room after practice one day, and my coach comes into the locker room. He comes in the locker room, he holds up, he says, I have one ticket to tonight's game. He said the Nets and the Knicks are playing at the Meadowlands in East Rutherford. Would anybody like to go to the game? Now, my coach was an old school throwback kind of guy. If you were a senior or a junior upperclassman, he would give you the ticket first. I scanned the room and no one raised their hand. I raised my hand. I said, Coach, I would love to go to the game. He said, Reggie, the ticket is yours. I said, thank you. It's free? He said, absolutely. I said, I'm on it. Coach gave me this ticket. I immediately thought to myself and remembered, the Knicks have a player of high character. Now, I grew up in Trenton. We got Philly teams, we got New York teams. I grew up more so rooting for the Philly teams. My uncle, Big Blue all day. Big Blue Giants. He was a Knicks fan, a Rangers fan. I don't even understand how he's a Rangers fan. Number one, he never been to a hockey game. Number two, I've never seen him watch the Rangers play. But he was a New York fan through and through. So I took this ticket. I remember walking back to my dorm room and thinking to myself, the Knicks have this player named Charlie Ward. I need to figure out how can I meet this man named Charlie Ward. I knew that he was a man of high character. So what I do, I come up with a plan. I said, I'm going to get to the game as early as I possibly can. The game was at 7:30. What time? 7:30. 7:30. I said, I'm going to get to the game at 6 p.m. So I'm going to get there early. I'm going to walk down as far as I can walk till security stops me. I'm going to stop. I'm going to see Charlie Ward warming up. I'm going to yell and get his attention. That was my plan. I get to the arena early, 6 o'clock. I walk in, I walk down, security stops me, everything is good so far. But guess what? I don't see Charlie Ward. He was nowhere to be found. But what I did see is Don Chaney. I saw Don Chaney walking across the court. I said, excuse me, Coach Chaney. He said, yes, young man. I said, Coach Chaney, can I talk to you for a second? He said, sure. I said, Coach Chaney, can you do me a favor, please? Would you ask Mr. Charlie Ward, would he be willing to come out and speak with me? I'm a young man, I'm a junior in college, and I'm just seeking some guidance. He said, I can't make any promises, but I'll ask him. I said, no problem. I stood there and I waited for about 2 to 3 minutes, maybe 5 minutes or so. And here comes Charlie Ward coming out the tunnel, buttoning up his warm-up, and he's walking directly to me. He comes over to me. He says, young man, how can I help you? I said, Mr. Ward, I'm a junior in college, and I'm just seeking some guidance. I said, Mr. Ward, my father's an alcoholic. He's lived really close to me for my entire life, but I've had no male guidance and no male leadership. But I want to be successful in this thing called life. Would you be willing to speak with me? He said, sure. He said, meet me in section 117 after the game. Wow. I immediately started scanning. Where is section 117? Oh, I located that thing. Section 117. Now, if any of you parents in here that know about rec sports, in rec sports, they have a running clock. That means once the game starts, the clock just keeps running. That's what I wanted that game to be that night. I couldn't wait for that game to be over. The game played, the game was over. I went to section 117 just like you told me. I went to section 117 and I'm standing there. How many of you know that fear will creep into your mind?
Come on.
How many of you know what fear will start playing tricks on your mind? So I'm standing in section 117, and as I'm standing there, there's a man to my left, similar to a man like you. A man with a beard, salt and pepper beard. I'm standing there, I'm looking at him, and he's looking at me. I look at him, and he looks at me. I'm about to make a conscious decision. I'm getting ready to go. I'm gonna leave. Charlie Ward's not coming out. He told me he was gonna come out, but why would he come out? Why would an NBA basketball player come out and talk to me? I'm Reggie Wright from Trenton, New Jersey. 7 square miles, graduation rate 71%. Why would he come out and talk to me? As I get ready to make a conscious decision to leave, here comes Charlie Ward coming out the tunnel. Comes up the steps. Says, how can I help you? I said, Mr. Ward, if you don't mind, can I please exchange phone numbers with you? I'm seeking some guidance. We exchanged phone numbers. Now, I'm not going to tell you my age, But I'm gonna date myself for a second. Anybody here remember Motorola two-way pagers? Remember sidekicks? Y'all remember sidekicks? So we exchanged Motorola two-way pager phone numbers. And after we walked out that arena and I went to his car, I never forget it, a Mercedes ML350. I cried like a baby. Because it was the first time in my life outside of my grandfather that a male had ever showed that type of interest and investment in me. I text him every single day. Every single day I text him. From February throughout June. And in June, something changed. One June morning, I received a text on my Motorola two-way pager. And it was Charlie Wood. This is the first time he initiated. It was always me initiating. He said, Reggie, I'm going to the Knicks practice facility. Would you like to join me? It was an out-of-body experience. You want me to go with you to the Knicks practice facility? Absolutely. I jumped up so fast and packed my bag and got on the train, I forgot to tell my grandmother I was leaving. I went into New York, he picked me up, we went to practice, we practiced for 2 hours, I'm in an NBA practice facility. I'm thinking once I'm done for this practice facility, he's gonna take me back to the train station. But he didn't. This is what he said to me. He said, I'm gonna invite you to come back to my house for lunch. When I came back to his house for lunch, I met his wife, I met his children. And after that lunch, he said, what do you have going on for the rest of the summer? I said, nothing. He said, why don't you go back home and pack a bag and come stay with me for the rest of the summer? An NBA player was willing to invest in me. My father around the corner never did.
Wow.
I went back home and I packed my bags. And the next day I took the train up. And I thought when I was living with Charlie, I was going to become a better basketball player. But what I learned was fatherhood.
Okay.
He taught me presence is more important than any kind of presence. I saw how he interacted with his wife. I saw how he interacted with his children. I saw how he interacted not just in public, but in private. There's a quote from Inky Johnson that says this: the worst thing that we can become is a public success, but a private failure. Yeah. I remember asking Charlie one simple question. I said, Charlie, why did you do what you did for me? He allowed me to live with him for 2 summers. And he said, I did what I did for you because basketball is what I do. He said, but my purpose is to impact, inspire, and motivate individuals like yourself. For those of you that are fathers and parents in the room, we get one opportunity at this. We're never going to be perfect. But all I ask is that you care. I'm going to leave you with this quote from Mandy Held that says this: to make a difference in someone's life, you don't have to be brilliant, rich, beautiful, or perfect. You just have to care. That's my time.